So when are we going to get new stuff to do in Destiny 2? Of course, Heresy is only just really wrapped up in terms of the main story bit, but as always, the Destiny community is hungry, and the next content drop isn't too far out now, only, 3 weeks until Rite of the 9. And while we await more specific and in-depth details for this upcoming event, I figured today we'd recap what info we have and talk about the connection between Rite of the 9, Heresy, and the next expansion for Destiny 2, which is coming this summer. So if you're wondering what's next, Bungie are cooking up an event which is aimed to appeal to all types of Destiny players. Firstly though, an important update from the Destiny 2 team, who confirmed this week that codename Frontiers will be dropping in summer 2025. There's been speculation as to whether this could be pushed out further. We don't have a specific release date yet, but the next expansion for the game is still expected in the summer, which is what Bungie had originally outlined. So for the moment, they're sticking to that plan. Based on the season end date, which is visible in the game, July 15th is when Heresy is set to conclude. So that is a possible release date for the next expansion. And in terms of what we do between now and then, there are a few things on the table. So on May 6th, Bungie will release Rite of the 9. That'll drop at the daily reset time, and it's a completely free dungeon-focused event, and as well as targeting established endgame players in Destiny, those who already run plenty of raids and dungeons, Bungie are creating a version of this which is targeted towards newer players or those who don't typically run that type of content. So importantly, it will be totally free, no dungeon keys required, and of course that lines up with the future, where Bungie have said upcoming dungeons for the next expansions will also not require a dungeon key. So this is going to be available to everybody, and similar to Pantheon, which featured a bunch of raid encounters, while it isn't identical, this is more or less the dungeon equivalent of that. So existing Destiny 2 dungeons, Prophecy, Spire of the Watcher, and Ghost of the Deep, are being updated and featured as part of this event. Before we talk about rewards and modes though, kind of like what we had with Into the Light and the Hall of Champions, the third Spire, which was the 9 social space from Trials of the 9, will be the sort of hub location for this. And from there, we'll be able to launch into the dungeons, pick up bounties and objectives associated with Rite of the 9, as well as rewards from the Emissary of the 9 vendor, and the ability to attune to specific weapons for the event. So Bungie have said that on a weekly basis, one of the 3 dungeons will be featured, and in that time, we'll be able to play different difficulties of it, as well as pick up weapon rewards and more. And there'll be a total of 12 dungeon weapons coming back. They'll have updated perks, a new sort of aesthetic, so they've been skinned up with sort of 9 logos, and variations of those weapon skins between normal and adept versions. Plus, the updated dungeon weapons will have a new origin trait called Gravity Well, and reloading the weapon automatically gathers nearby ammo, which is pretty interesting. So these will be pretty cool and similar to the Brave Arsenal from Into the Light. As we mentioned, we will be able to attune to specific weapons. A side note, of course, Bungie accidentally released Rite of the 9 early in a very incomplete form, and players were able to pick up some weird looking weapons, which had kind of a base placeholder skin. For any folks who did get those early, of course, they came with really weird perk rolls, which again were kind of placeholders. And if you've kept any of those, Bungie have said they won't be removing them from our inventories, but when Rite of the 9 ships, perk rolls will be updated across the board to prevent some rule-breaking combinations. Otherwise, we'll still retain these rewards on launch day, so it'll be interesting to see whether the skins get updated as well as the perks. Presumably that will be the case. But in terms of the weapons that'll be featured, from Prophecy, we'll have the Prosecutor Auto Rifle, Relentless Pulse Rifle, Judgment Hand Cannon, and Sudden Death Shotgun. Then we'll see weapons from Spire of the Watcher featured, which will include the Wilderfly Grenade Launcher, Long Arm Scout Rifle, Liminal Vigil Sidearm, and the Terminus Horizon Machine Gun. Then finally, from Ghosts of the Deep, New Pacific Epitaph, No Survivors, Greasy Luck, and Cold Comfort. There'll be additional layers of reward though, many of the items associated with the more difficult versions of the dungeons, but Bungie have said there'll be 5 new emblems, as well as a new title seal, and additional weapon cosmetics. And that's where the different difficulty versions of these dungeons will feature. So, importantly, there'll be a version called Explorer Mode, which is a beginner-friendly version of the dungeons. So if you haven't played a lot of dungeons in the past, or even if you're a solo player, these should certainly be easier to tackle, and Bungie have said there'll be no darkness zones, so no full team wipes, plus there'll be a short revive timer at 5 seconds, as well as tooltips which help to explain mechanics, waypoints, and helper platforms, which will appear when reaching checkpoints and make some of the jumping puzzles both easier to actually traverse, but also easier to understand in terms of direction. Of course, it's safe to say that this Explorer mode will have more basic rewards featured, but of course the real difference between adept and non-adept weapons is not that significant, so there'll still be a really good reason for players who don't normally run dungeons to jump into this. On top of that though, there'll be Eternity mode, which is basically a standard difficulty of these dungeons, pretty similar to what we have now, and it'll feature a scoring system based on performance. So the fewer deaths we have, the fewer wipes, and the quicker we complete the encounters, the better the rewards are going to be. And then the hardest difficulty will be Ultimatum mode, which Bungie have likened to contest mode difficulty for raids and dungeons outside of Rite of the Nine. So this is going to be quite difficult, presumably, and they've said it will feature the not swap modifier, where swapping exotic armor, kinetic weapons, or energy weapons drains all ability energy. Again, there will be scoring involved, so the fewer deaths and wipes, and the better the general efficiency of the completion, the better the rewards are going to be. On top of that, there'll be adept weapons with double perks, which are exclusive to high scorers, so that'll be a neat additional reward element to this. But as we mentioned, there will be additional rewards linked to it, and I'd also anticipate, potentially better chances to pick up some of those older dungeon exotics as well. And of course, the dungeon exotics include Hierarchy of Needs from Spire of the Watcher, and the Navigator from Ghosts of the Deep. And especially for newer players coming into the Explorer mode, presumably that will introduce a better opportunity to acquire those exotics. So that's what we know about the dungeon stuff at the moment. Bungie will definitely give us more details in the next couple of weeks, I would imagine. Plus, given that this is an event to sort of tide players over on the lead up to the next expansion, firstly, around that time, we are quite likely to start hearing more about Frontiers, but it also looks like there will be narrative connectivity between Heresy and Rite of the Nine, as well as the next expansion. And a mild spoiler alert here, but Bungie Leaks shared, it looks like there will be an additional kind of puzzle or secret that will unlock around the time that Rite of the Nine is taking place. And we don't know exactly how it will play out, but it more or less looks like a game of chess that we'll play, where there will reportedly be two versions, one called Middle Game and one called End Game, as well as two sort of unique locations associated with it, an unknown antechamber, a place where a puzzle may be unraveled piece by piece, as well as an uncharted space, a mysterious pocket within Eris's throne world. Upon completing that, they shared, there will be a new emblem called Enigmatology, but given that this seems to link to the Nine and Eris's throne world, again, it isn't clear at the moment, outside of any leaks, as to exactly how it will play out, but there does seem to be a connection between all of the narrative pieces, including Heresy, Rite of the Nine, and presumably Frontiers. So it's certainly on the way, guys. There has been some frustration that Bungie have been pretty quiet about Frontiers, and that's understandable because typically we have a pretty long marketing build-up for a new expansion. Obviously, Bungie are doing things differently this time around for one reason or another. However, given the connection between these upcoming events, it is anticipated that Bungie will be speaking about the next expansion as Rite of the Nine is rolling out. So all I can do for now is keep you posted, but for any players who are wondering what's next in terms of content or looking to come back on board for the next expansion, it's obvious that Bungie are seeing this as a stepping stone to that next big release. So for now, that's what we have today. I hope you guys have found this recap useful, and of course we've put a few extra pieces together in terms of the connection between the season, event, and expansion. So share your thoughts down below. If you found the video helpful, a rating really helps us out on the channel as well. Get subscribed if you want to be kept up to date with more Destiny stuff, but otherwise, I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.